Thank you for turning to page 121. The theme of today's video is going to be ideas. How to come up with them, how to work them, where to get inspiration, things like that. I'm going to go through some of my process on where I come up with ideas for GMing Traveller. And this would apply to just about any role-playing game I've ever GM'd. And you can apply this even to characters that you're going to develop and things like that. But where to get your ideas. And sometimes you have this epic idea and then the game kind of takes on its own life and it shifts things away from what you had planned, and why that's okay. So we're going to take a look at a little bit of that. We're going to take a look at some sources of inspiration today, and I'm going to go through the process of how I let an idea kind of germinate before I really do anything with it. So I'll get into that in a moment. I also want to mention subscribers. Yes, please. Channel is growing beautifully. If anybody can subscribe who hasn't, or if you have some people maybe in your group you've mentioned my channel to and they've been on the fence, have them come on in. We talk about games here a lot. I got some outstanding feedback at the little Jump Point Con we did over the weekend. I'm going to be rolling some of that into some of my videos going forward. It's just, I really appreciate feedback on the comments on Facebook and on my videos on YouTube. Keep them coming. I'm always looking for ways to improve the channel. Constructive criticism, always welcome. Just telling me something was garbage, that's not constructive, and that'll probably get zapped. Also, I have a Patreon going. Still looking to upgrade some stuff on the channel. If you can help out there, that'd be fantastic. So take a look. There's a link to that below. But back to today's idea. Ideas, where they come from. What to do with them when you are going to GM a game. And this focus will be on Traveller, so you need an idea for a Traveller game and you're just stuck. What to do? Today on page 121. Now, a lot of the thoughts I'm going to put forth in this video pertain to any role-playing game that I've ever run. I'm just going to go through the process of what I do for Traveller and what I do when I'm stuck for an idea. So, if you're anything like me, when you run a role-playing game, specifically when I run Traveller, the very first thing I do is I come up with an idea. Oh yeah, this idea will be great. And then I dive in and I build all this nuts and bolts stuff. Now, I've said before, I'm not a tech guy as far as world building or building my own starships, that kind of thing, and I'm not. But I am a detail guy when it comes to the Traveller, the world they're going to be on, the tech that's going to be available to them, items that the players have available to them. I do drill down on that. Okay, so I've come up with this really cool idea, and this is the best darned idea I've ever had for Traveller, and I can't wait to run it. And I excitedly write everything down, and I get everything going, and I come up with a sweeping story arc that's going to be, 10 episodes. And then, as I like to say, and as my wife likes to say, no game survives contact with the players. I have learned over the years, don't write 10 stories. They're going to go ahead and they're going to change your story. Case in point, my current Traveller campaign, I had all set up as a merchant campaign. They were going to have at first a scout ship, and then they were going to get a merchant vessel, and they were going to be doing all these merchant runs, and it was just going to be basically a commerce kind of campaign, and they decided to go pirate. I had to pivot with the pirate and make up a lot of stuff as I went that night, and then I had to spend the next week between games coming up with what I was going to do for the forthcoming game. And actually it ended up, I had a couple of weeks between games, which was a blessing because it took a while to get my feet under me after being thrown that hard a curveball. So that can happen. So one thing I generally will try to not to do is over prepare for any kind of story or any kind of idea. So I don't want to over prep it, because if I over prep it, then as the GM, I tend to be disappointed if they don't get to what I prepared. Oh, I spent all this time during the week on all this stuff, and yet they didn't even touch on it. Well, that's not the player's fault. That's my fault. I have to learn where to pick and choose. But now let's go back to the core idea of this, or the core theme of this video, which is ideas. Where do you get the idea from? What I'll generally do is I'll start thinking about a game that I've got coming up in the future. For instance, the next Jump Point. On the ride home from the current Jump Point, I had an idea for the next one I'm going to do. That's pretty rare, but I was excited about the idea, and I started working on it. And I couldn't work on it because I was driving the car. But actually, that's where I do some of my best work. I like to let ideas ferment in here for a little bit. Just kind of in the old peat bog of your mind, just kind of sit there and fester and grow and change before I put anything on paper. And if I have time, which I certainly do between now and whenever the next jump point's going to be, I like to let the idea just kind of grow in my mind. I'm a good background kind of thinker. In other words, I'll come up with an idea or premise for something for Traveler, and then I'll just kind of let it ferment in my brain for a little bit rather than start committing things to paper right away. I will commit to paper, but I have also found that if I've got time for it, I will go ahead and I'll just let the idea kind of run in my background, in my thinking while I'm washing the dishes or taking care of the animals or driving. I do some of my best thinking driving. I have scrapped entire written, prepared games that I've had waiting on the drive home from work the day of the game. I've come up with a better idea in the car. I've had no time to sit down and prep it, so I've had to wing the entire game, but it's a better idea, and I've found, trust my gut in that. And if I come up with a better idea, 9 times out of 10, I'll go ahead and I'll run it. So that's kind of how I gel it, but where do I get ideas from? I say I've got an idea for the forthcoming jump point, but I'm not going to say anything about that because I've actually come up with a second idea for a game. And in a few ways, from a role-playing standpoint, I think the second one might be better. So, okay, I've got my ideas. Now, what am I going to do with the idea? Well, I'm going to let it sit for a little bit, and then I'm going to start working on the nuts and bolts. But now, I'm stuck for an idea. I've got my game coming up next week. It won't be Traveler, but I've got a game coming up next week, and I don't have any ideas for it yet. I haven't decided what I'm even going to run. It might be D&D. It might be Champions. We don't know. We're only getting together for one more game between now and Thanksgiving. It's just kind of how everybody's schedule is falling. So we're only going to have one more game between now and essentially the end of November. And then after that, we're only going to have about 3 games between the end of November and we always break for Christmas week. We don't play the week of Christmas or the week between Christmas and New Year. We've done that for years. My family has a few birthdays fall in there and that kind of stuff. So we just don't schedule anything. So I've only got about 4 or 5 games left for the year. 2022 will be in the rearview mirror at that point. But my idea for my forthcoming game, I don't even have it yet, and I'm working on it. Okay, what am I working on? How do I get ideas? Well, if it's Traveler, one of the main places I get ideas is this fine friend. This is the Traveler map. And I have nothing to do with the production of Traveler map. I just love Traveler map. If I'm stuck for an idea, I will call this up on my tablet or on the TV or on my computer, and I'll just browse around a little bit, and I'll take a look at different worlds and different areas that I could run a game and why I want to be where I want to be. It's no secret that District 268 in the Spinward Marches is my favorite subsector to run in, but maybe I want to break away from that. Maybe I want to do something toward the Solomani Rim or over in the Gateway area. There's a lot of places in Traveler you can run games. Core. I've never run a game in Core of Traveler, in the heart of the Traveler Empire. I've never run a game there. Why? Because to this point, it hadn't been developed all that much, and I always thought, oh, it's too civilized. What kind of game can you run there? And the answer is anything. So, looking for an idea, I'm going to start probably here for Traveler. I'm also going to look at various books. This is the Traveler, the Aliens of Charted Space number 3. I reviewed this a few weeks ago. So I'm going to browse this. Even though I've just read it, I'm going to browse it a little bit. And then maybe I'm going to take a look at the original Little Black Book. Maybe something from another publisher. This is an Independence book that I'll be covering soon. Independence Games Publishing for Clement Sector 3rd. And this one I'll be taking a look at soon. So maybe I want that. Or maybe I'm going to go back to some of my older stuff. GURPS. Here's a nice little GURPS planet that I've never run anything on. Maybe I'll play with this a little bit. Maybe I'll move the planet, put it where I want it. Or, of course, maybe something completely different. You know, this is Vampire Fleets from Travel to the New Era. What kind of ideas can you get from that? Any. And the reason I've chosen what I've chosen on these is all these are available to everyone in one form or another, either through DriveThruRPG or through Far Future Enterprises on the thumb drive or CD-ROM. Or Independence Games, you can get this through their website, or you can get it through DriveThruRPG. And the point of bringing these particular things to your attention is simply because they're something accessible to everybody. It's nothing exotic, nothing weird that I have, but nobody else has, any nonsense like that. Okay, another good source of inspiration for ideas is fiction. I love Larry Niven. I thought he was a great writer. I will read a lot of his known space stuff. And I've read it over the years and I'll reread it. Dune, one of my favorite novels. I've read Dune over 10 times. It's just a good source. I'm not going to run anything on a desert planet, so that's no good to me. Wrong. You get ideas where you get ideas. You can be watching just about anything. A couple of years ago, we were watching an episode of Castle, if you remember that show, a detective show, and Castle's a novelist who's going to come up with this new character based on the police that he's tailing around. I was watching an episode of Castle, and I had an idea pop into my head for a Traveller game based on detective work, and I had some characters who had a little bit of investigative skills at the time in the campaign. This was under T20, so I said, okay, I'll go with that. So I kind of did like a street kind of game, but I put it in Traveller. So Wrath of Khan, Star Trek's the second movie from 1982, yes, 40 years ago. I had an idea for Traveller back in the 80s based on when Kirk and company go to the starbase where Khan has already been, and he's done nasty things to the people who had been on the starbase. I did a game where their players are in a starbase exploring where somebody else has been and trying to figure out what happened and what they should do. So it doesn't have to be an idea that comes straight from science fiction that I'm adapting. I don't have to adapt something straight out of The Expanse, but I can get my inspiration from The Expanse. My wife watches a lot of cooking shows. I've recently been reading up on the Villani and how the problems they had where they didn't have the proper enzymes to break down the food that was native to Vland, their homeworld, after they were transplanted there by the ancients. What to do where they were cooking and working around it. Well, my wife watches a lot of cooking shows. She'll have it on and I'll be reading. And I came up with an idea for involving cooking in a Traveller game, and it became a complete sidebar type thing, and it was only a little part of the night, but it was an idea that came from my wife having a cooking show on. So I like to let background noise kind of infiltrate a little bit, and I pluck ideas from that. And you don't have to pluck whole gigantic ideas. You can pull little ideas out. Sometimes you can have ideas that happen while you're at the table. My recent Walpurgis game, while we were playing, I came up with the idea of Valpurgia, a female living embodiment of Walpurgis. And she had a real squeaky, annoying voice. I can't do the voice as well as I did because I'm still coming back from Jump Point, plus I'm getting over a cold. But the point is, while we were sitting at the table, I had the idea, I developed the idea, and I ran the idea, and I had the characters begging for death during my Walpurgis game because I had made this character so completely annoying. She's just totally obnoxious, but she read as lawful good. It was a good party. Even in Walpurgis, they couldn't do anything. If you don't know what I'm talking about with Walpurgis, I've talked about Walpurgis in several of my D&D videos. My very first video was about Walpurgis. It's a Halloween game I run every year for D&D. I'm just using that as an example of an idea that can happen while you're at the gaming table. So now going back, you want this great Traveller campaign. You want Pirates of Drinax to look like garbage next to it. This idea is so good, and it's going to be huge, and it's going to be all yours and all original, and you start working on it. And then you can't get together for a couple of weeks because this person's out of town or this person's sick or whatever is going on in everybody's lives. So then you start overworking the idea a little bit and you get tired of it. Well, before you brought it to the table, you are tired of it. You really don't want to do that idea anymore. And that's why I would rather under-prepare than over-prepare on an idea. Not for a game. For a game, I will have done my diligence. I'm going to sit down, I'm going to read up on the tech that the players can have. I'm going to read up on various skills that they have. I'm going to review their characters and know what I'm getting into. If you saw my video about the Jump Point Con, where I'm GMing the actual game, they hit me with several things I hadn't anticipated. But because I'd done my homework in the background, I was ready to deal with it and make on-the-fly decisions. And in my mind, that's the way to prep to GM a game, is do the background prep. Always have a good idea, always have at least an outline, but you don't have to have this killer story that everybody has to adhere to, because 9 times out of 10, the game is not going to survive contact with the players. So I know that differs from a lot of what's going on in modern role-playing, where modern role-playing, you're playing this long, elaborate story arc for your character, and I'm not knocking that. A lot of people like to play that way, and that's fine. However you like to play is great. As long as you enjoy it, who cares? It's not the way I prepare, and it's not the way I play, and it's not the way my players are used to playing. We're older, we're old school. We tend to let our characters develop organically through the campaign. And very often, the character development will then change the campaign. So my Traveler campaign changed completely because my players decided they were going to be lawless pirates rather than these nice little merchants that I had all these stories for. So that's really it. This is, I guess, more about the GMing process than anything else in this video, as opposed to where to find ideas, but I guess that's been in here too. So if this seems like a little off-the-cuff mishmash, it kind of is, but I kind of wanted to give an insight into my creative process when I'm coming up with something. I am never married to my story. I am always ready to change my story to have the game be more fun for myself and for the players. And as a GM, by the way, it's really, really important that you have fun. Don't be self-sacrificing. Oh, it's more important my players have fun than I. Wrong. If you're not having fun, you're not going to come back to it. And if you don't come back to it, the game will fold. You're also, if you're not having fun, it's going to show as you GM the game. Things are going to kind of fall apart as you're going along. You're just not going to be in it. You're not going to be invested as you would be if you were sitting there laughing with your players and having a good time. So I totally recommend think of yourself first. I always think of it as when you're on an airline and they tell you, if cabin pressure is lost, secure your own mask before you can secure your neighbor's mask. It's the same thing. Make sure you're having fun and then come up with a way for your fun and the player's fun to mesh, and then you'll have a good game. So that's it. I'm done pontificating. Oh, looks like my Traveler map went away while I was talking. I'm done pontificating. Just some good sources. There's a ton of stuff out there, especially for Traveler. There's just a bunch out there you can pick from. Ideas are a dime a dozen. How you adapt it is, of course, up to you. So that's all I've got to say for today on page 121. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe or take a look at the Patreon if you can. And that's it. I'll see you next time.